My story starts. I'll give you guys the short version. If you want the long version, you can put it in the comments and I can share that with you. But the short version is I grew up in a wealthy neighborhood of Chicago. I always felt a little bit different. But, as women, we're told to just don't fight back, always, people please, and kind of just go the path that we're told to go and don't question anything. But I'm very curious and I am kind of skeptical on things. I'm a very positive, optimistic person in general, but I do like to question how things are run. And growing up in this suburb of Chicago, which was amazing as a young kid, but eventually I caught on that nothing's perfect, and this suburb basically felt like people were competing with one another, and everyone seemed to wear this mask on their face, and they weren't their authentic self. Like, they were just doing it to see who would get the most powerful, or which kid had the most was the most successful, or like married the most successful person. It just seemed like it was like a competition to see who was the best person in this neighborhood, and none of the conversations I was hearing were authentic, and no one was really questioning the world that we lived in. And it got me curious, and I was always questioning it. But being in that environment, you become like the people in your environment. So during high school, I mean, it's kind of what you're told, and I became someone I wasn't really happy with. I've always, like I said, been positive, but I started to judge people and not be the best person. I just wasn't a human being at my core. I was kind of in that same rat race, so I could get to the best college I could and kind of not rub it in people's face, but just show them that, like, I am on that level too, which is very dangerous. And I ended up going to a college I really did not want to go to, but I went there because it was, considered a more successful college. And I had a horrible time, a horrible experience. I can get into that experience in another episode, but basically, I was on the rowing team there. I got recruited. I did not like the journey. It was not for me. I didn't even want to go to college for rowing, but I felt forced into it just because of the environment and the pressures from my family. And it was a horrible time of my life, and it sunk me into a deep depression, and I struggled with eating disorders, suicide attempts, and just once I got past that, it was mostly just self-destruction, like drinking a lot, drinking and partying way too much, to the point where I was drinking, blacking out every day of college. And the sad thing that I look back on is I didn't even, take advantage of that opportunity to be in a higher education environment. I kind of just was there to party, and that's what I did. And I just got more and more depressed, more anxious. It was just a horrible environment for me to be in. And once I got out of that environment, moved back to Chicago, things did get better, and I started to drink less. I was still drinking, but not as much as I was in college. And I got a job, and I started going in the corporate world. And I thought I was happy. I thought everything was good in my life. COVID hit, and that was a little tough because you get like disconnected from everyone, and your only way to connect with people is on social media. And I got addicted to social media at that point, and it felt kind of similar to my home environment where I grew up, where everything was just a competition and showing, bragging, the highlight reel on social media, which you don't think is affecting you, but it really is. And you start to compare yourself to other people, and you feel horrible about yourself on social media, especially people that you grew up with. Like, I don't think humans were supposed to be aware of everyone that we know, what they're doing in their life, and how amazing everyone's life is. Like, no one was really being vulnerable on social media, which was really hard for me to see, just because it affected me. And I'm a very anxious person to begin with, but there's something to social media that is just very toxic and dangerous, and I think anyone on this earth can understand that, but we still are addicted. We still don't stop it. And the same goes with alcohol. We all know that it's poison that we're drinking, but we continue to drink it. And for me personally, I think I had a horrible allergy to alcohol. I would get so hungover to the point of throwing up all day. So, 12 plus hours after drinking, even if it was 1 or 2 drinks. It got to that point where I was so sick every day from drinking, or every weekend, and it was impacting my anxiety, obviously my self-worth. I wasn't able to be productive, so it would last, I would maybe throw up all day, but then the next 2 days I would just be very tired, fatigued, and just recovering from that one day of drinking. And it was just a cycle that kept going. And I just couldn't understand how this thing that made me so sick was so widely accepted in society. And if I stopped drinking, I'd be looked down upon and kind of considered an outcast. So I struggled with a lot of things throughout my life, and I questioned a lot, like higher education, alcohol, social media, and corporate world. That's kind of where I ended up. At corporate world, I was just feeling that businesses cared less and less about the employees that work there and more about the bottom line. And it just seemed like they just didn't appreciate the employees and kind of expected, like, oh, you have a job, you should be thankful, and we're just not going to pay you. We're not going to increase our wages even though inflation is this much higher. Like, you should just be happy to have a job type mentality. And I struggled with that. So that was kind of the backstory. I'm sorry, 10 minutes in and we're just getting to my awakening. But I felt like I needed to explain a little bit about who I am and, the questions I had in this world and what I struggled with. So 2024 is the year I had my awakening. I was 28, and I had just ended a 5-year relationship with this man that I thought I wasn't sure. I never felt that it was right at my core, but I felt the pressures from, my family and my friends and just society in general to move on to that next chapter. And it was hard to end that relationship, but it ended up opening a door to this amazing world, which I never would have been a part of if I had continued on with that relationship. So it was just a huge reminder that listening to your gut is the number one important thing. After my breakup, I met this man who kind of helped me enter this world in a weird way. I had been, I was going to church with my family. I was raised Christian, and I always had that intellectual relationship with God, and I believed in him, and sometimes I would go to him if I was struggling with an issue, but it was not anything that I would kind of identify with. And so it was only something I would go to if I was with my parents, let's just say that. And I was on my way to church with my family because I was in town that day. I was in Wilmette, and he responded. I was like, "That's all. I didn't know that you went to church. That's amazing. Like, I need to start going back to church too, and I'm going to start doing it." And the church service that I heard, it had a great message, and I wanted to talk to him about it afterwards, and so I did. And he ended up going to his church, and he sent me like the online video from it, and it just kind of it opened the conversation to this new spiritual world. And that wasn't enough to awake me at all, but it was just kind of like the first step in that process. Then the more that I started dating this guy, the more he started to tell me that, social media is really toxic. He wasn't on social media for that reason, and he said it's just so much better for his mental health and, his focus, his productivity, and he just felt like there's only negatives that come out of social media. So he actually convinced me to, pause my social media for a week, which I ended up pausing forever. But I didn't know that at the time. I was just like, I'm going to take a little cleanse. Some of those influencers say that, but I felt like it really did take a toll on my mental health, and I could see how much happier I was and how much more free time I had and how much more focused at work I was with no social media. So that was a huge unexpected surprise, I guess I would say. And at that same time, I was struggling with, the hangovers still, and just how anxious. He could tell I was very anxious, and I didn't really even know I was anxious. I knew I was a little bit, but nothing like crazy. And he was just saying that alcohol can really make anxiety a lot worse. And, why am I putting myself through this agony and like getting sick every week if I could just not drink and be so happy and healthy? And, this might be a little controversial, but he, showed me there's other things that I can take that don't make me sick and actually can enhance my senses. So I had an alternative to alcohol, which I had never had that option before, I thought, and it really did help me, and I was able to stop drinking. One day I just was like, I'm gonna not have a drink this week, and it kind of similar to the social media thing, it just continued on, and so now I haven't had a drink or used social media since September of 2024, and it's so incredible. I can't recommend it enough. It's I never have a moment where I'm like, I want to drink, and I know some people struggle with it, but for something that made me so sick, I can't. I was like, no. And like they have mocktails now, and they make it so easy to do. Anyway, so quit social media, quit drinking, kind of started to explore my faith a little bit more. And on top of that, my boyfriend now was sending me videos of these very introspective podcasts, which I had never, I spent all my free time watching Netflix and doom scrolling on social media, so I never really felt like I had the time to listen to these like interesting podcasts. I would only really pay attention to pop culture podcasts, and these podcasts were so interesting with these guests that I never thought I would like learn anything from or like would ever heard of. But there was a specific podcast, Diary of a CEO, with a divorce lawyer, and he sent it to me. It was all about love, which I did not expect from an episode with a divorce lawyer, but he was just basically saying how, sad it is that love is not really talked about enough, and like love is actually the thing that the world revolves around. Everything's based on love. Wars are based on love. Religion's based on love. And how we just don't even, we kind of take it for granted when we have it. You know, we like work so hard to get love and find that relationship or whatever it might be. And then once we have it, we kind of forget we have it, and we, you know, don't show them that, or show them the appreciation that we have for them. And there was one part where he was describing he showed this part about a Buddhist mantra, and it was, think about someone that you love and imagine hugging them, and then imagine that they died in that moment and how you would feel if you couldn't hug them anymore. And then now they're alive again, and how would you react? Like, what would you change if you could tell your loved one who died that you love them? Like, it's kind of like how, if just like imagine your loved ones and just think about every time you see them that it's the last time you're going to see them. It's going to change how you talk to them and share your love. And you're obviously going to tell them that you love them and just kind of give a little bit more love to them than you normally would. And that kind of like changed something in me. I was like sobbing at the end of the episode. He obviously said it a lot more eloquently than I did, but it was just so cool to be starting to listen and learn from these podcasts, which I had never been exposed to before. And then, okay, now we're actually getting the spiritual awakening. 20 minutes in, this is definitely probably the long version, but there's definitely more to the story than these, so this is short for me. So there was one day where I was chilling on the edge of the Lake Michigan, and I was looking out over the water, and I was just kind of having a spiritual moment. I didn't have any music on. I was kind of just looking out, and I felt God's presence. And if you've never felt it, you probably wouldn't understand, but if you have, you would. It's this powerful sense of, you just get this overwhelming feeling of love and peace. And I have, as someone who is extremely anxious, I had never felt at peace before, probably my whole life. And it was just this like feeling of happiness, which I can't even describe. It was so amazing. And I was just out looking over the water, you know, feeling very thankful for my life and all the relationships I have. I have such an incredible life, and you know, all my family and friends. I haven't had to go through a very significant death, and I just feel so blessed, and I just felt kind of unworthy of all the blessings I've had in my life. And I was just looking out, and I had that feeling of, you know, overwhelming love. And I was like, wow, that was powerful. And that is like, actually, that's legit. Like, that God is real. And I'd never had that before. And that wasn't what threw me over the edge for the awakening, but it was definitely the first, you know, big step that I took to my awakening. And after that moment, I was like, wow, this feeling of happiness, I've never had this before, and I want to learn more. So I watched a podcast on what happiness is, and I learned that happiness is wanting what you have in this moment. It's, you don't want anything more. So when we, you know, probably hear it all the time, but you know, that bigger house is not going to make you happy. That promotion is never going to make you happy. These tangible things don't make you happy. It's like feeling that you have everything you need in your life right now, and just embracing that and knowing that you are loved and that you love, like, love is all that matters. And so I was just walking back after that walk, like being like, wow, like I used to spend so much money on clothes so I could get people to like me. And it's just so crazy looking back now, but I was so concerned about how people perceived me, and I just wanted to show my best to the world, and I wanted people to compliment me on my fashion, and I just wanted to be noticed. I wanted that attention. I didn't have my own, I couldn't validate myself. I needed that external validation from other people. And once you realize you are enough and that you are amazing as a person, and it doesn't matter what you wear, it's your personality, it's who your soul is inside, that's what people care about. It kind of changed everything for me. And I, stopped shopping. I was like kind of a shopaholic, like I couldn't stop. And I stopped spending all my money on clothes that I didn't need. And I was like, wow, I actually need to get rid of stuff. I need to clean out my apartment to get rid of all this clothes and all this stuff that wasn't really making me happy, which I thought it would. Like, it would make me happy for a second, and then, I put that thing in my closet and never wear it again. And I was like, wow, I could, if I'm not spending money on all this stuff, I could really help a lot of people with the money. And, I started to think about how I could give back. And then I was on my way home for Thanksgiving. It was, November 24th, and I was on YouTube, and which I had never been on before, but because my boyfriend was sending me these videos on podcasts, I was, a little bit more active on YouTube, and maybe it was because I was off social media, so it was like the only thing that like could give me that quick dopamine, I guess. But I was on YouTube, and a near-death experience video showed up, and I had never heard of a near-death experience video, and I was very curious because I've always had these weird questions in my head about, death and like what happens after, but we never talk about death in our society. And if I ever mentioned it, it was just like, no, we don't think about that. Like that, yes, it's inevitable. Everyone's going to die, but you want to live in the moment, and you just don't want to think about those like scary things. So I never really did, but as a kid, I questioned it a lot, and I never really told anyone. So I was very curious, and I clicked on this near-death experience video, and it actually changed me. That's what like awoke me up, because it was so powerful. And I have a really good sense of reading people. I can tell when people are fake and when they're not. And these people that have had these experiences, they are so authentic and vulnerable for sharing these experiences in the first place. But I could just tell, like, you can tell when someone has so much love in them and that something magical had happened to them. And these people shared how, they died, and they maybe weren't in a good place before, and they died, and then they had this life review where they were able to see every single moment of their life and how their actions impacted other people, and if they did a positive thing, how that rippled on, and like how it had a ripple effect, and how that positive thing would inspire someone else to do a positive thing. And it was just a beautiful moment. But the reverse of that is if they, yelled at someone or did something negative to someone, or just didn't even give them the acknowledgement that they're a person, that also has a ripple effect, and that continues on too. So that really changed how I live my life, and I just am so conscious now of how I interact with people, and I just want to make sure everyone that I interact with feels some light from me. I never want to judge anyone again, because we're all crazy, weird people if we're our authentic self. And I wouldn't want anyone to judge me for, being here and sharing with you my experience. So who am I to judge someone else? We're all equal in the end, and we all will die and go on to, a past life, or we'll go on to another life, but we're going to the afterlife together. And I don't know, it just changed something in me, and just their experiences of this life beyond what we can experience here, and the love that they have there. And I personally have never had one, so I'm not one to speak on it, but it really did change something in me. I was actually sobbing in my Uber on the way home, and I couldn't wait to tell my family. And it was something that they, I think they were curious about as well. And after that day, I made it my purpose in life to share and spread love with everyone, especially my family and friends, but everyone that I meet, and just be the best human I can be, and stop living my life for myself. And it's impossible. It's like you can never do that, but you could take steps and try to change how you spend your time. Are you going to spend your time watching Netflix, or are you going to spend time volunteering somewhere? And or not even volunteering, just doing something like picking up trash on the beach, or it's just little small acts of random kindness. That's what life's all about. And if you do that, it'll inspire other people to do the same. And when we're our authentic self, and we're doing something that we love, that energy will spread to other people. Even if we're not directly impacting someone, people will see what you're doing, and it'll change something. It'll spark something in someone. And it's just, after having this awakening, my life's been very different. And a lot of people probably think I'm nuts now, and that's okay. I just want to tell everyone that there is more to this world than what we see, and there's more to the world than money and getting high up in the corporate ladder. I have actually been struggling with my job, and not feeling the purpose that I once had there, and I feel like I'm being called to a greater purpose. So that's another part of a spiritual awakening, is figuring out who you are as a person, figuring out your strengths. Everyone born has a gift or gifts, and figuring out what your gifts are and using those to better the world. And I'm in the process of figuring out my purpose now. And I was, after my awakening, I was like, I want it now. But things take time, and I have to remind myself all the time that it's not the destination, it's the journey getting there. So every day that I'm making progress and learning more is part of the journey, and nothing's going to happen overnight. And it's all about that life. I think the number one thing that I learned is life is all about, the number one thing is love, and giving love, and talking about love. And probably sound like a hippie, but it's true. If you center your life around love, you'll be a much happier person, and you will attract more people, because people want to be around love and happiness. But it's also about creating being creative, learning, and helping others, and in taking advantage of the senses that we have, our sight, smell, touch, taste, hearing. It's so cool that we have these senses, and if you really take time to experience each one and really like focus in on your senses, I feel like they get heightened, or I don't know, something with the spirituality is I definitely have had heightened senses, and I've had so much happen to me since the spiritual awakening, so many spiritual moments, I should say, and that could be a separate episode, but yeah, it's been amazing. I don't want to bore you anymore. It's been 32 minutes, so you probably haven't even lasted this long, but if you have, thank you for taking the time to watch this,